Hi, Huntresses.
Welcome to Talk Rich to Me.
Where we explore the human side of finance. We're your co-hosts, Stephanie Gutman
And Yesenia Rhodes, co-founders of Huntress Wealth. Hi, Huntresses. It's Yesenia. This episode is part 2 of a now 4-part series on motherhood, money, and choices. Last week, we talked about what it means to choose single motherhood through embryo adoption. Today's guest shares what it looks like to choose a full house, 3 kids, a career, and her take on the idea of doing it all. Let's get into it.
One of my favorite things about starting this podcast and starting Huntress Wealth has been the fact that I get to share my friends with the rest of the world. And I think my friends are intelligent, badass, strong women. And I am so excited to share Marianne Chronister. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Yes. With the rest of the world, because she is a baddie. We're doing this motherhood series. We've had the first episode, which is the episode on choosing single motherhood. And now we're doing the complete opposite, which is choosing to have
A lot of children.
3 kids in Austin and to maintain a career. And I first met you at daycare,
Yes.
and we were on PTA together, which,
Kind of made up.
yeah, it was interesting.
And then I remember we had a date at the park behind our houses with our babies, and they were like 5 months old. And now they're like 4.5 and wrestling each other.
Yeah. And they're still besties.
Yep.
But I remember you being on the call and on one of these calls, and I was like, oh my God, the energy that you bring is amazing. And I'm so happy for you to be here and tell your story.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to have been asked.
Of course. I think it's interesting for everybody to understand the basis of like how we are the person who we are and the root of it all. What was your relationship during childhood with money?
Sure. So I think I was aware that I grew up with a lot of privilege. Um, when it came to money, my parents both had good careers. Specifically, my dad was an attorney, and I went to private schools. Not I think in elementary school it was a Catholic school, so those are generally more affordable in the scheme of private schools, but still, they were paying for my education when that is not a thing you have to do. Um, and I definitely never, we were never, wondering where our next meal was going to come from or anything. We lived very comfortably. Um, that being said, there were times when I could feel financial stress among my parents. And mostly I think that was due to the nature of my dad's career as a trial lawyer, where his income was directly dependent on winning or losing a case. And so he had a couple big cases a year that would then kind of determine our family's financial status for the next several years, potentially. So I would definitely feel the stress of that at times, and, understood to the in the best way that I could as a child, the pressure he felt, um, carrying the bulk of the financial responsibility for our family. My mom did work as well for part of my childhood. I do have a sibling that had special needs, so she ended up leaving the workforce and becoming a full-time mom slash advocate for that sibling. So she was really inspiring in a number of ways, but um, especially with that, then it did fall completely on my dad. With that vantage point, depending on the mood, it was either, everything is great, or like, we need to really tighten up because we don't know how this next case is going to shake out. And um, so there was not a huge emphasis on saving. We were a family that generally spent money on things that we wanted or needed. And I think, if you were to talk to my parents today about that, they would definitely be proud of what they were able to give me and my siblings in terms of our educations. My college education was fully paid for, which is something that I am extremely grateful for, and know that that is a large part of what set me up for financial independence and security so early in my career. Um, However, I think that, they're pretty open with me that they would have made some different choices if they could go back, in terms of their financial decisions, in their adult lives.
That is a very interesting way to have experienced money as a child, kind of like the feast or famine type of situation. And certainly, my parents own jewelry store, so I remember when like Christmas sucked and it was like, oh my God, but they had other investments. But if you're relying solely on one source of income, that's like that those like things like being a trial lawyer, um being like anyone that's dependent on commission effectively it's very tough to like financially prepare. But I am curious how that might have molded your, call it, adulthood choices.
Yeah. I still would not consider myself the most financially literate or competent person throughout my, childhood and adolescence, and even in formal education, like in college. I don't think that that was ever something that I was explicitly taught or sought to learn on my own. Definitely have done a little bit more of that in adulthood, but I still feel that I have a lot of gaps. And I was lucky enough to marry someone who has kind of taken the reins on our family's financial picture. Not to say that I don't have visibility into all of it and that things, large purchases and kind of our overall budget and big picture are not group discussions, but just in the division of labor in our household, that is something that he takes more point on than I do. And I'm grateful for that. Um, I don't feel that I have to know every little nitty gritty detail but that is something that I wish that I had known more about, um, growing up and into my adulthood. And it is something that I want my kids to learn. It's definitely impacted my career choices. I would always say from a very young age that I never wanted to be a lawyer. And I think that was just molded by the specific vantage point that I had with my dad's career. That being said, I did have an internship doing a direct sales role in college, and I did really well at it. I was going door to door selling print ads in my university's student planner, and and that was what, 2012. Like, even in 2012, selling print ads
I was gonna say,
was a
printed.
yeah, literally, like, selling print ads in 2012 was still a tall order, especially to small businesses. So, the fact that I did really well at that was surprising, honestly. But it was like, oh, maybe I could have a career in sales. But when I was just out of college and really didn't have much money to my name, the idea of having a super low base salary with a potential commission on top of that, while uncapped, sounds really exciting to a lot of people. For me, all I could see was that lower base salary, and that not having a guaranteed income where I would feel comfortable and not having to worry about paying my bills wasn't something that I was interested in. So I did take a job with a really solid starting salary for someone that was coming right out of college. And I've just kind of built on that ever since. And of course, now today it's come full circle, and I do have a sales job with a good portion of commission based income. But again, I made sure that the base was something that I would be comfortable living off of. If it's not the case that I'll make zero commission, but like, that was sort of like, okay, I know that at this base salary, I can maintain our standard of living and not, feel the pain of fluctuating commissions.
Yeah, so that's your risk tolerance level.
Yes. Another example of that was during a different point in my career. I was a consultant, and I was on a contract basis with clients, and that led to a much higher hourly bill rate, essentially. And while very lucrative, the contracts are time bound. So you might get extended at your client, or you might not. And then, the firm you're working under will try to find you another contract, but there's never a guarantee. So, I did that for a little while. And then when I got pregnant, opted to switch back to a full-time role so that I wouldn't have the question mark of, am I going to have to be job searching in 3 months? And is there going to be a job when I'm job searching?
That's a great transition, Marianne, to planning for parenthood. But so, yeah, what was the plan? Okay, first of all, let's step back. One question. You have 3 kids. Was the plan 3 kids?
The plan was always 3 kids. We both come from 3 kid families, which I think has kind of just shaped our idea of what we wanted our family to look like. Of course, before you have your first, you're sort of like, you have this idea in your head, but then there's the caveat of like, well, but we'll see how it goes. Like with each subsequent kid, we'll see how things go. We'll see how our capacity feels like. There was, no question after our first, we wanted to have a second, pretty close in age. And then um, there was still pretty much no question that we wanted to have a third. Um, and then we had our third, and it definitely felt like we were at capacity. In fact, I like to tell people that we we had exceeded our capacity. Um, but now our youngest is 2.5, and things feel more manageable. Especially, they not just the youngest getting older, but it turns out they all get older and get a little more independent every year. While it's still a freaking lot of kids and a freaking lot of work, we're starting to see the light of a school age child and having a little more independence and having a little bit more ability to reason with you and stuff like that. So we just potty trained the little one, so we're out of diapers. So that's an expense we can cross off the list.
So are you ready to add a 4th kid? It sounds like you might be talking yourself into a 4th. I have one friend that has 4 kids and lives in Austin, and I'm just like, wow. I mean, wow in a lot of ways. Mostly it's I don't have the mental fortitude, but is there ever a consideration for you to have a larger than 3 child family?
Like I said, we always planned on 3. The finances were, obviously on our minds, but not a deciding factor when deciding to go from, say 1 to 2 or 2 to 3. It was just sort of like, okay, yeah, it's gonna suck for a few years while we're paying for daycare, but like we'll be fine and we can handle it. Um, we are probably not planning on having more children, but I have like let my mind go there of like what that would look like for our family. And for the first time, I think the finances of having 4 scares me. We'd have to start all over again with an infant in daycare, and we'd have another, you know, college tuition to account for. We'd have another, I guess TBD on what we pick for schooling for our kids long term. Like, are they going to go to a private, elementary or middle or high school down the road? Like, who the heck knows? And asking yourself that question with 3 kids is also pretty daunting.
In the next episode, we're going to bring an advisor, a financial advisor that wrote an article stating that the 3rd child is the new Birkin. And when she said that, I was like, wait, Marianne needs to come talk about her 3rd child.
When we had our second, we definitely felt the pain of, 2 small children in daycare at the same time for multiple years. When we had the third, then the discussions then became, is it cheaper to get a nanny at this point than sending our kids to daycare? Spoiler, it's not. I think if there comes a point where that might be the case, we had not quite hit that tipping point with going from 2 to 3. But for a lot of logistical reasons, we did decide to get a nanny last year, but we still wanted to keep my middle child in, some sort of a part-time program. So that was an expense. Plus my oldest was in public preschool, which still wasn't free. For a year of like 3 children in daycare, we were probably at almost $60,000 a year. Um, and that's of course not including all of the like random backup care that you don't think about when daycare or school is closed, or for breaks, or if someone is sick. And with the nanny, we had again a full-time nanny. We had my middle son in a part-time preschool program, and then my oldest in a full-time public preschool program that was not free, plus aftercare for that. And that was, plus a few random weeks of summer camp when my oldest was out of school, just to kind of get him out of the house. That was almost 80,000. So yeah, it's not, it ain't cheap.
It ain't cheap.
It ain't cheap. And surely, when you look at our individual incomes and you deduct taxes and all that jazz, you're like, okay, Marianne, why do you choose to work? Would it come out in the wash if you were to just stay home? Um, First of all, no, not quite. I think, for me, even if I'm only making a little bit more than the childcare, that's still money that's contributing to our standard of living, right? Um, I have so much to say about the decision to work versus stay home.
Why did you decide to continue to work and invest in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a personal decision, and I have so many close friends that have chosen to put their careers on pause and stay at home while their children are young, and I respect that so much. And I don't see either choice as superior. It's just what makes sense for you as a person and what makes sense in the context of your family and your values. So for me personally, when I was first on maternity leave, I remember, first you kind of have the first 2 weeks where you're getting your feet under you. And then once I sort of had my feet under me, I was like, wow, this is great. Like I can just plan my day. I can go to a mommy and me workout class. I can watch my shows. I can meal prep. Like this is the life. Maybe I don't want to go back to work. And then I started to get just kind of antsy. I'm a very social person and um, I like the contact with coworkers during the day. I need adult interaction throughout my day. And while I'm sure that if I were a full-time stay-at-home mom, I would find ways to fill that part of my cup. Um, I was just missing having something outside of the home. I guess metaphorically since I work remotely, but something else that I'm putting my time and energy into other than my children. Um, I think from a financial perspective, being able to contribute to our household and our bills makes me feel like I don't have any guilt when I do want to spend money on myself. I feel like if I were to not work, it might change the dynamic of our relationship when it comes to money. I don't know. I feel like I can't say this without being like judgy of the people that are in
No,
that situation.
I don't
But
think
like,
you're not. I
no,
don't think you're
like,
being judgy. I feel
yeah,
like we all have our own psychology, and I can hear where you're going,
yeah,
and I can say I feel the same way. And please tell me that I'm wrong, but I think where you're going with this is you don't want to ask for permission to spend money or to do
totally,
something.
totally.
I hear you 1000%. That's a big reason that I have always chosen to work. And I remember when Blake would talk to me about something and be like, oh, you spent money on XYZ. I'd be like, Mama works. Like, you're not gonna.
Yeah, and
It's
and I
just, like,
totally
not.
and I think that again, like if I did choose to be a stay-at-home mom, I'm sure we would find a dynamic that worked for us when it comes to money. But in our current dynamic, I just really like that, I can go, occasionally get my nails done, or I can buy a shirt from Target or whatever it may be and not feel like, oh, I'm not contributing at all financially, but I'm spending money on non-necessities. Um, I like to treat myself sometimes. So
Me too. I think there's also a value of independence in it, right? So it's not that there's a wrong way or a right way to do it. Like you were saying earlier, definitely being a stay-at-home mom, that's a really hard job.
oh,
I would not do it.
and I can't that's the other thing I haven't even gotten to yet is that despite so I mean there's yeah, I'm contributing to my 401k. Yeah, I'm contributing to my household. Yes, I'm keeping, professional skills up to date and building my resume. But also, I just don't think I want to stay at home. And sometimes I beat myself up for that realization because I'm like, wow, XYZ friend is a stay-at-home parent and they do it so beautifully, or at least appear to do it so beautifully, because I know that, it's not always, you don't always see the whole picture, but it's like, wow, they've chosen this path. They're fulfilled. They are, crafting their days with their kids. And I'm like, would why don't I have the innate desire to do that? I Again, I think both things can coexist. There are just people that is their strength and that's their calling. Um, or they feel that that is important enough to how they envision their family. When my kids don't have school for a week, I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, how do I, I'm like, truly, I'm like, how do people do this 100% of the time? Because I feel like my world it's just insanity. But then I have to remind myself, like, okay, no, if this was my reality 100% of the time, like I would get good at it or I would get better at it. And things that feel hard is just because I'm not used to them right now. But like we would get in a rhythm, we'd get a routine. So I like to tell myself that like I would be fine at it if forced, if it was forced upon me. But like in this current state of being, I'm like, it is not my path. And
I'm not applying for that job.
I can't. Well, and it's not like you're not working and you're staying at home. Like you're working a different job.
No, I know. That's why I said
Yeah,
I'm not
you're
applying for
working
that job.
you're working a different job that is harder, and your boss is 3 and and has no sense of reasoning or people skills or anything, and they will scream at you and throw crap at you and not eat the food you serve them, and it is a thankless job. So
Wait, maybe that's where we need to flip the script because technically they're not the boss. We're the boss, but I understand that Joaquin is my boss most of the time.
I think any parent would agree that you lose that sense of autonomy when you become a parent. And if you're doing that all day, every day, it can be really challenging. And so I always say that my work is it's a parenting break too, selfishly. And I think that that does make me a better parent in the times that I'm not working. I'm able to not be so burnt out from parenting,
Yeah.
on the weekends or in the evenings or in the mornings. And knowing that I have that kind of break built into my day, even if it's not necessarily like a self-care break, but it's a mental break from parenting, which is huge for my mental health. And that's a big reason why I keep working too, if we're being honest.
Man, honestly, God bless those teachers because I don't know how they're with my kid all day. I'm like, let's be honest here.
And a lot of them have to go home to their own kids. Yeah, I have friends that are teachers and man, that's just
That's a love of kids. I love
it's
my
truly
kids.
a special calling, a special calling.
Do you feel that being a parent has helped you at work or vice versa?
I think in some ways for sure. I think at work there's sort of the obvious answer of, you have to be really wise about managing your time when you're balancing the demands of parenting. We have full-time childcare, so it's not like I'm parenting while I'm working, but there's still the mental load of other things regarding parenting that are kind of ever present. Like I need to fill out this form for a field trip or send money for this or think about what I'm going to feed them for dinner tonight. So, balancing kind of being able to take care of those things, which working from home is a huge perk for parents for those reasons, because taking away the commute time and also being able to do little bits and bobs around your house when you just need a computer break or your lunch break or whatever it may be is a huge perk. Um, so I think, becoming efficient with your time during the day, and also efficiency and intentionality in your workday so that you can be fully present with your kids during the times that they are home and that you have with them during the day. So being a parent has also helped me set firmer boundaries at work, right? So not only am I more efficient with my time during the hours that I'm dedicated to work, but I've also learned to set firmer boundaries so that I can be present for my family as well. I think it's also given me more empathy toward other coworkers who maybe are parents as well, or maybe just who have other personal obligations um, that might take them away from work at times. I think that you don't really get it until you're in it. We're all adults and we can show up and be good at our jobs and also be good parents. Prior to being a parent, I might have been a little bit more not fully understanding what that pull feels like between, you know, two very different obligations.
What do you hope your kids learn about money from you?
I hope that they receive a more solid and well-rounded financial education in general. That doesn't necessarily have to be from me, but um, I want them ideally once they go off to college to have a pretty solid understanding of like different types of accounts and investing, different ways to invest, and the differences between pros and cons of all of those things, and understanding how much money it might take to pay rent or to put a down payment on a house if that's the path they choose. So I think these were sort of all things I learned out of necessity and just kind of as I went along. But I would love for my children to be a little bit more well informed when they release from the nest, if you will. I also hope that I show them that you can have a career and be a parent if that's what they choose, and that it's okay to spend money on yourself sometimes if you're in the position to do so. I know that, that's one thing that we didn't really get into much when we were talking about my childhood, but I think because of the dynamic of money with my parents, like my mom never spent money on herself, just did zero self care things, never bought herself new clothes or anything like that. And, um, I do those things. um, So I think there needs to be a balance, but see, because I also don't think that I extravagantly spend. I mean, I guess that's all relative and subjective, but I would like to impart a mindset of balance on my kids where, you know, it's important to be mindful of spending and conscious of saving and investing and all that, but also leave some room to enjoy life as well and to treat yourself sometimes.
Yeah. Conscious value based spending. My favorite term.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Um, we talked earlier about when you talked about your childhood, you mentioned that you were really grateful that your parents had paid for your college and how you knew that that had set you up for success in life. When you think about having three kids and your financial, you know, situation, are you planning to leave, call it legacy for your children, whether
Yeah, I definitely want to pay for their college or whatever they choose to pursue after, schooling. Um, Again, I'll emphasize that that was just a huge gift to not have to be paying back debt as I started my career in the workforce. Um, it was a huge is a huge privilege that's a gift I was given. And I want to be able to give that to my children as well. We have, 529 accounts for all of them that we regularly contribute to. Family sometimes will contribute to them, in lieu of gifts or whatever. Um, but that is for sure a goal to pay for their college. Will college even still be a thing when our kids
who
are out of?
knows?
I mean,
But the good news is you can turn their 529 into a Roth
there you go.
IRA. Yeah, if they don't use it.
There's something I learned today on this Talk Rich to Me podcast.
Huntress, we're here for your needs.
Okay.
So we talked about wanting to impart some financial knowledge on our children. And I think everyone kind of starts at different places with when we start to do that. Just out of curiosity, with your kids who are all under the age of 6, for our listeners to know, are you starting to teach them money lessons?
I think in small ways, yes, especially my newly 6-year-old. He is very fascinated with the idea of money already, and gets excited when he, gets money in a birthday card, or, he wants to do a lemonade stand to earn money. So he definitely understands that, the power of money in the sense of like it can buy him Pokemon cards or like, it can buy him things that he wants that my mom and dad might otherwise not buy him. He's sort of, I think, starting to get a sense of like, what's a lot of money and what's not a lot of money. Um, in terms of the things he wants and why that might play into our decisions whether to spend money on something or not. Um, when he has his own money, his inclination is to spend it right away and get something, which I think is really normal for kids. There's a great Pete the Cat book called Pete the Cat Saves Up. And yeah,
Nice.
and it's about, Pete the cat, really wanting something at a store that was, a bigger item. And he does all these things throughout the year to earn money to save up for that thing. And throughout the course of the year, he encounters other things that he might want that are less expensive that he could afford, but he remembers back to like his goal of saving up for the big thing and he decides to forego. When we read that book, it was helpful to reinforce that concept of like, it's okay to spend your money, but if you want a bigger item, like you need to save up for it. And so um that's something that we're sort of reminding him that, okay, you have this money, like if you can decide to spend it now, like it's your money. We're not going to force you to do one way or the other, but like let me remind you that you also really wanted this big thing, and if you save this money then you'll be able to get that thing faster. So we're able to talk about those things now that he's, probably starting when he was around like 5 or 6. He just turned 6, so I think it's all kind of starting to come together in the last year or so. My 4.5-year-old and 2.5-year-old certainly are not really there yet. Um, Another thing that I'm teaching him, and I'm talking about my oldest specifically again, is just kind of social norms around talking about money with his friends. I think we've all, or anyone that has kids, have probably been in situations where like their kids might say something that was said sort of in your family unit or in confidence and like might say it to their kindergarten class. And so I'm just trying to teach him things like that. Or like he got some birthday money, like that's really exciting, but like he shouldn't brag about it to his friends at school. Like there's just things like that that you don't realize you have to teach a small person, but you absolutely have to teach a small person. And he, we got back from a trip this week, and he got some birthday money on the trip, and he was so excited about it, and was so excited about the what was in his mind a lot of money. And he was like telling me when he got in this car, he was like, "Mom, I told all my friends that I got $74 on this trip." And I was like, "What'd they say?" And he was like, they said it was cool, but like I didn't say anything bad. Like I didn't say like, but you don't have $74." So like I was like, okay, he
There's
was
a proper way to talk about it. Yeah, you
yeah,
can tell people he has $74. That's cool.
yeah. He I think he was trying to reassure me that he wasn't bragging about it. Like he was just telling them, but he wasn't like rubbing it in their face or making them feel bad that they didn't also have $74. Um, so yeah, I think we're trying to teach things like that about, how to properly manage your money, but then also how to talk about or not talk about your money with other people.
So this is a mini series inside of our podcast, right? We're talking about motherhood as a choice, which is just we're at a very weird political time where motherhood as a choice is being questioned in all different ways, right? Being incentivized to have more children, being uh, told you don't have a choice in whether you're having children, whether for whatever need that is, whether
Hmm.
it's medical or not. And on our first episode, we had a woman who really wanted to be a mother and didn't have the life she quite imagined when she was young as to how she was going to have that child, but chose that she really wanted to do that on her own. Um, One thing that she said that she brought up on her own was we don't have to do it all, right? Like we don't have to be 100% on all the time in everything that we do, and to give ourselves some grace. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that particular thing. You're a working mother of 3 children, and like I've said before, I think you're perfect. So I'm just curious, how do you balance doing it all?
I don't do it all by any stretch of the imagination. I like the analogy of sort of the glass balls and the rubber balls, right? Where, if you're juggling all these balls in the air, like some are glass and some are rubber, and when you're prioritizing what to spend your time on or your energy on, the glass balls are the things that absolutely can't fall on the floor. And like the other things, like, yeah, if you don't get to that, like it's okay. Like the world will keep spinning. Um, so I think, that's generally how I approach, what I'm prioritizing on any given day. Like you said, not every day is 100%. If I look at my work, a lot of it is very, like I said, I'm in sales. There's a lot of outreach. There's a lot of having to have the motivation and the grit to keep going, even when I'm not getting responses, which is the majority of the time when you honestly, and you can still be very successful and have that be the case. So, um, but and not every day is 100%. Some days I feel like I crushed it, and some days I'm like, what did I do today? Looking at the macro, I still am like, okay, I did a good job. It's fine if I have a day or a few hours here and there where I wasn't maybe optimally productive. If, over the course of the week, like I'm still hitting my goals. It's the same with, I think, parenting. We all have our off moments with our kids or, even as a partner, like we're not at our best 100% of the time, but at a macro level, we're probably all doing a pretty dang good job. Um, in terms of like running our house, I almost don't like talking about it because I know this is not the case for the majority of heterosexual relationships, but my husband is amazing in a lot of ways, in every way. But in terms of how much he contributes to our household and running our household, he is our house manager. Well, it's, like I said, I think I alluded to this um, earlier when I was answering another question, but I do feel like it's a pretty balanced partnership. And that is one of the reasons why I'm able to do all the things that I do. That is a huge reason, is because my husband is a true 50-50 partner. And a lot of the times he's doing dang more than 50%. Because, his job is very flexible. He just takes initiative on doing a lot around the house, which I'm so grateful for. I was actually just complaining to you, not complaining, but I was relaying to you last night how I was having to make my kids lunches because he's out of town, and I just like truly don't even know what he packs in their lunches because that's just a chore that he owns and I don't have to worry about it. And that's how we divide things up, is that if one person is owning something, the other person doesn't really have to worry about it. I generally do, doctor's appointments and school forms and like that kind of administrative stuff, but like he does a lot of the day-to-day chores. Everyone divides up their household labor differently. We have a very healthy partnership. We also have help. We have a lot of help. And actually, I'm really glad you asked this question because I can't believe this didn't come up sooner. Because a huge factor in being able to have 3 kids in under 3.5 years was having family nearby, living near family. And that wasn't really planned. We settled in Austin, and then through a variety of kind of serendipitous reasons, all 4 grandparents have moved to Austin since then. So from the time we had our first child, we have had at least two or one set of grandparents in town, and now we have all 4 grandparents here. That cannot be replaced in terms of the amount of help that brings our family. We're not relying on them for regular childcare. It doesn't replace the expense of having a full-time childcare situation. But what it is, hey, my husband's out of town and I have to be in 2 places at once. Hey, dad, can you come, cover for me? Or can you come help bring the boys to school or whatever? Or it's my dad saying, or my mom saying, hey, we can come watch the kids after bedtime on Friday so you guys can go on a date. Or it's, Thanksgiving break and my in-laws say, oh, you can just send the kids here for a few days. Like, and everything in between. Just having the support system of having family nearby is a huge part of our village. We also pay for a cleaner to come every other week. I wish it was weekly. I am not a good cleaner. Um, but that's a choice that we spend money on. Um,
That was the best thing my husband and I ever did, by the way. Like so many fights have gone away. And we were listening to a podcast years ago, and it said money is time, and how it validated it. There was like some study about people that hire people to clean their homes, whether it's once a week, twice a week, or whatever, that improves relationships so much because it's such a big fight in relationships, which was so interesting to me.
That is one of the things that if you have the money to do that, I would definitely recommend outsourcing things where you can to be able to be more present in, to show up in ways that matter.
Yeah, I love that. What is your advice to all the huntresses out there?
So my advice to all the huntresses is kind of taking a hard pivot here because we've been talking about like finance and motherhood. But my advice to all the huntresses out there, if you are um, trying to get your next job, switch careers, is to really not underestimate the power of networking, both using the network you already have and also building your network. And that just sometimes means shooting your shot. I mean, putting yourself out there either by going to in-person events, joining online communities, that can be a really powerful way to connect with people and learn about opportunities to grow your career. Or just even sliding into someone's DMs. I got a job by sliding into someone's DMs on Instagram, literally. Someone I admired starting a company that I was excited about. I slid into their DMs and over the course of 6 months, convinced them to hire me. I slide into people's LinkedIn DMs all day now for my job. And when I was applying for jobs, did a lot of that and found got a lot of interviews from, not only filling out the online application, but then going the extra mile and saying, okay, who's trying to figure out like who's in HR, who's the hiring manager, who's the head of this department that I'm applying for, and just sending them a connection request, a little note saying, hey, wanted to connect with you. I just applied to this job. I'm really excited about it. And then, you go from there. Sometimes in a sea of hundreds of applications, having that show up in their inbox is probably the difference in getting your resume even a 2-second glance versus like not at all. So my advice in terms of career progression is to just shoot your shot.
Love it. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Shoot the shot.
Shoot the shots. And that's why I'm in sales, friends.
The end. And then the last question is, what does the word rich mean to you?
So this is such a tough question because there's so many things that go into being like happy and fulfilled in life. And you could of course boil it down to like my family, my health, my family's health, like having a roof over our heads, like that, like blanket security. Like I think the first thing that comes to mind is just like I want to have all my basic needs met. That is baseline what I need to feel to not have like anxiety. But then I think taking it a step above that, like what does rich mean to me is the ability to be intentional about how I'm like crafting my life, to be able to spend time and money prioritizing the things that matter to me, whether that be travel, whether that be growing my family, whether that be a hobby that I'm really into. Um, Having the resources, so time and money, to be able to dedicate to those things that are really going to fill my cup. And that is different for everybody, right? Like what that will mean. I read that book by Ramit Sethi, but his whole thing is like, designing your rich life. And that has really stuck with me of like, okay, it's not this like Dave Ramsey, like don't spend money on anything like super, super frugal. It's like, okay, figure out what is gonna, what rich means to you, literally, and like, define, write down those things, and like that's where you funnel your money into, because that's like your biggest ROI in terms of your happiness and your rich life per se. So that has stuck with me as a mindset. I wouldn't say that I um like follow his principles 100% or anything, but that as a takeaway has been really formative in how I view my life.
At Ramit, whenever you're ready to come on my podcast, you can. You think you're funny. That's what you said in your book. I listened to it.
You should be on his podcast. That'd be a heck of a lot of exposure.
I mean, at Ramit, come tell me about your rich life, your financial journey.
Well, his hot take is that like he rents, he doesn't own. Like that's his big hot take.
I know, but that's because he lives in New York City. Marianne, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, another baddie that I get to share with the rest of the world.
I had to come really far to be in this physical location with you, a whole mile.
Before we leave, I wanted to say one thing. Will you either say bye huntresses or talk rich to me?
It's you talk rich to me.
Dirty. Okay, I like it. Okay, ready? I will cue us off because it's hard. But 1.
Talk rich to me.
Bye, huntresses.
You've been listening to Talk Rich to Me, a production from Huntress Wealth. For more chill takes on finance, sign up for our newsletter at huntresswealth.com. That's HUNTRESSWEALTH.com.